Hey English 345 students, welcome to week 11. So we're about 3/4 of the way through our semester already. We're going to be heading into the home stretch here pretty soon. But I think you'll enjoy the next few modules that are coming up. We're going to be moving from Module 5, which you finished up today, Sunday, and then we'll be moving into 6 and 7, which will take us about 4 weeks to finish those two. So 2 weeks to work on Module 6, 2 weeks to work on Module 7. So taking a look at our course calendar, okay, so we'll scroll ourselves down to week 10, which we are just wrapping up. And in this module, or this half of Module 5, you learned all about pragmatics, which is basically putting meaning into context. So you learned about meaning with semantics. And moving into pragmatics, now you're going to be taking that meaning and putting it in various contexts. So you learned about things like giving a sufficient quantity of information in a conversation, being relevant and straightforward, the cooperative principle, Grice's maxims, implicature, so kind of meaning one thing and saying something else. So one example that came from the quiz you took was, hey, do you want to go out for sushi? But maybe the response was, we have bills due. So it doesn't seem like it would be a direct response to that question, but it implies something else, that we don't have the money to go out, right? So sometimes the messages that we give and communicate have other meanings kind of underlying them depending on the context. You even saw in one of the quiz questions that intonation plays a major role in the way we interpret a message. And that can differ from culture to culture. Whereas, let's say, one culture would use rising intonation to end a question, another might not, and that could cause communication difficulties when someone is learning a new language. And even sarcasm. I mean, we can tell something is off in a situation when somebody uses sarcasm because it doesn't really, the message they're delivering doesn't seem to match the context. So I think it's a really interesting subfield of linguistics. It's kind of related to sociolinguistics in some ways, but it's basically taking the language itself, the words, the grammar, and putting it into various contexts and seeing how that message changes according to the context. Okay, so you worked on 5.4 through 5.6 this week. You're submitting your annotated bibliography, so that's going to give you a really good, strong foundation as you move into starting to work on your draft of your research project, which is due in week 12. So this coming week, you have 3 assignments due in our next module, which is Module 6, Language Variation and Change. And then moving into week 12, you'll wrap up that module and you'll also be submitting the draft of your research project. And I'll just give you a heads up about where to find the information for that towards the end of this video so you can go and review the requirements. All right, so let's head into Module 6, off to another linguistic subfield. Okay, so let's get in there and take a look at those first few assignments. So the first is a video that comes from TED Ed. It's a short video, about 4 minutes long, talking about how languages change and evolve over time. It's kind of like a really major crash course of historical linguistics. Historical linguistics is a linguistic subfield in and of itself. You could take a whole course just on historical linguistics. You could specialize just in that area. But this video gives you a very brief overview of that subfield of linguistics. It's one of my favorite. I find it kind of fascinating to take a language and trace it as far back and as far back and as far back as you can go to try to find where that language came from and how different groups of people are related to each other now and throughout history. So I find that really fascinating. And you saw that when you did the activity this past week with the etymology dictionary. You chose a word from the list of 20 words, and then you needed to go and look up the history and the origin of that word. And it all is kind of tied in with this linguistic subfield of historical linguistics. Okay, so you'll take a quiz after watching that video. And then in 6.2, we'll get a little bit more into historical linguistics by looking at language families. So you'll read this article that comes from the Linguistic Society of America, called Language Variation and Change by Sarah Thomason. And then once you've read the article, be sure to study the images that you see here. One is kind of a world map of different language families. Families are organized into different groups depending on similar characteristics that they share. And you'll see that they're kind of grouped together by continent or by region of the world. Although there are going to be exceptions to this, and you'll find that out as you work on these assignments this week. In Europe, for example, the Basque language spoken in Spain doesn't have any connection to the overall Indo-European language family, and it's still a bit of a mystery to linguists. The other languages you might assume are European languages, like Hungarian and Finnish, are actually not Indo-European languages. They're not part of this big group that covers Europe and even some of Asia. They're part of the Uralo-Altaic languages. So languages you would expect to fall in a certain group don't always because of historical circumstances. Okay, underneath you're going to see a graphic here of the Indo-European language family, and that's basically taking this group right here, Indo-European languages, and breaking it down into its individual groups and languages. So we can subdivide. This is almost like those tree diagrams in syntax, right? So we have the Baltic Slavic family, the Germanic, obviously English is a member of the Germanic family. We have the Romance languages, the Celtic languages, and it's a little hard to read this here, but it's Indo-Iranian, yes. And then we have 3 languages that are just by themselves, which are Armenian, Greek, and Albanian. They don't belong, they're not grouped with other languages within the Indo-European family. Okay, so what you'll be doing is, after you've read that article and you've studied those graphics a little bit, then you'll go ahead and click on the 6.2 assignment link and take a quiz on those materials. So you'll get to know a little bit more about historical linguistics. And finally, I think you might have a little bit of fun with this one. This is assignment 6.3, all about language trends. So as you learn in 6.1, language evolves over time. Living languages are always changing. And if they stayed the same, they would die out. And new generations coming up are always going to be adding new words and new ways of doing things in the language. So even though your grandparents might get on your case about using certain words or being on your phone texting all the time, it's part of the normal process of language change. So I'll have you listen to this radio report, this language trend be like, I'm not going away, from Boston Public Radio. And then you'll write a discussion post, about 2 paragraphs, around 250 to 300 words total. And you'll incorporate your answers to the questions below. If you want to answer them individually, you can, or you can just compile all the details of those questions into 2 narrative paragraphs. I'll let you choose. Okay, and number 8, I'll ask you to sort of apply this language trend of like to your own life. You know, observe your own speech. And after you listen to this report, you're probably going to be noticing that you say like all the time because you're not even aware of it. We do it so much that we're not aware of it. But once you're aware that this trend exists, then you're going to notice it all the time. Okay, so how often do you use the word like? And can you think of any other language trends that have emerged in your lifetime? So share one with your classmates and then respond to just one other classmate about the language trend he or she shared. So kind of share details. You know, what have you noticed about language trends together? Okay, so that's everything as far as the assignments this week, 6.1 to 6.3. I did put a little extra credit opportunity here. I just think this is fun. So here is a map of all the different dialects in American English, and you'll learn more about this next week. But I thought this would be kind of a fun preview to that. So as you can see in this map, there's a lot of dialect diversity in American English, and for 2 extra points on your final exam score, you can take this American dialect quiz. It's from the New York Times, and you answer about 25 questions or so, and it gives you your own personal dialect map based on how you answer the questions about your own language use. I took it and it put me right where I'm from, which would be this Chicago area right here, which wasn't surprising to me. And so if you want to, you can go ahead and take that quiz yourself. And basically all you have to do is, once you take the quiz, I'll have to add those instructions here. Just click on the assignment link and you can just put a screenshot there of the results that you got from the quiz, and that'll get you the extra credit. All right, moving down beyond that. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm going to leave it open until Friday, April 30th. So you don't have to do this immediately, and you don't have to do it at all unless you want to. All right, so let's see. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you that the research project working draft is actually down here at the bottom of this Module 6 folder, so not this coming Sunday, but the one after, April 11th. This is where you're going to be submitting your working draft. But in order to see the details of that working draft, you've got to go back to Module 3 because that's where you did your proposal. So if we scroll up to Module 3, and we'll go to about the middle of the page here. Okay, you'll see the individual research project proposal. That first document attached there is the guidelines of the entire assignment. And that will tell you what you need to have for the draft. So let's go ahead and get that fully opened. Okay, so the timeline, as it tells you here, the working draft is due Sunday, April 11th. See this Module 7 folder? I actually moved it back to the Module 6 folder, so that's where you'll actually submit it, at the bottom of the Module 6 folder. I made that adjustment because of some due dates I changed in the beginning of the semester. So as it tells you here, hey, you've got all the information you need for the working draft. So it must be a minimum of 5 pages and cite at least 3 of the 5 scholarly sources required for the final draft. And this is where your annotated bibliography will come in. You should have a good number of sources there already that you can draw from. But you know, I do it and strongly encourage you to submit as much of your final draft as possible in order to get the best feedback. So, you know, submit you know, the 5 pages if that's all that you can do. But if you can do more than that, that will give you more feedback that will better prepare you for the final version. Okay, so grades for the working draft will be based on completeness, minimum of 5 pages, at least 3 scholarly sources, correct APA format. I know APA might be new for a lot of students. If you have questions about it, you want me to take a look at a citation, or you know, take a quick look through the format of your paper, don't be shy about asking about that. I've been using both MLA and APA in different circumstances for many years, and I'll be glad to give you feedback on that before you submit it, so don't be shy. And that can be through email, it can be during virtual office hours. Either way is completely fine. Okay, so one thing I do want you to realize about the working draft, it is a work in progress. So I won't grade you on the content or organization of your paper at this stage as long as you meet those completeness requirements. So as long as you have 5 pages and you've cited at least 3 scholarly sources, you're good. You will get 100% on your working draft. If you have anything less than 5 pages or anything less than the 3 scholarly sources, then your paper will lose some points. Or if you have major problems with APA format, or you know, your paper is difficult to read because of grammar and mechanics, those would also downgrade it. So completeness is going to be 60% of your working draft as long as you've got the required number of pages and sources. APA format, I will be pretty flexible with this, especially if you're using APA for the first time. I know you might need some guidance on that. So that, you know, I will use this as a feedback tool. And grammar and mechanics, I think most of you are English majors, so this shouldn't be an area of concern at all. Okay, so that's going to be due, as I said, 2 weeks from today. So you will go to the Module 6 folder to submit that draft. So any questions, concerns you have about that as you work through it, just let me know. Okay, so that is really everything we have for this week. We're going to be working our way through language variation and change and kind of having some fun with that this week and next week. And I get to see how your research projects are developing by or 2 weeks from today. So good luck with everything this week, and any questions or concerns, just let me know. Bye-bye.